Oh, hi. Welcome to Let's Draw Goths. I found this picture of a young Elizabeth Hurley, A-list actress, and she apparently had a goth phase. So I'm going to draw it. You know, when I was in kindergarten, first, second grade, and you'd have like free art time in class, and you'd have your fresh paper out and your crayons and pencils and whatever, and right away some little child would reach over and scribble something on my page, right? Ha ha, I ruined your drawing. Well, I would take such like devious joy in that, because I would look at that scribble and I could like kind of see things in it. It was like a suggestion, a prompt almost of where to go from there. So I would just turn the scribble into a dinosaur or Batman. It would spoil that kid's whole attempt at being a little brat. Well, there's nobody around to do that for me anymore, but I still enjoy kind of having that prompt sometimes. So I might just take out my watercolors and with mostly water, maybe just a faint bit of blue, start laying in some ghostly little images, I bet there's got to be a goth album out there somewhere called Ghostly Little Images. Anyway, it's nice as like a little prompt. You start to see things in these faint shapes, It's sort of like those deep focus posters of the mid-90s. Remember those? Was that the mid-90s, early 90s? Everybody at the mall would be at the frame shop. They'd be staring at the 3D rendered thing that only looks like something if you stare at it right. I used to like to stand there with the painting and gaze at the people gazing at the painting. I was a jerk. It's almost in a way it takes the pressure off of drawing, because you are starting off with a nice pristine piece of watercolor paper that costs you $5. Well, if you splash a bunch of random crap on it right away, then you've got nowhere else to go but up. You've already ruined it, And then once it's dry, I can go in with my pen, and this is the fun part where I can really start creating lines and making a drawing that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done these initial sort of random globs, I like sort of surprising myself by seeing something that I didn't know could have come out of me. So now I'm going in with a brush pen here. I think this is called a Pentel Manga pen. It's great because it's got like hairs at the tip instead of foam. Anyway, I'm just making big sort of loose marks with it. I try not to think about it too much these days. I'm really more interested in how things feel than some sort of realism. You'll also notice that I went in for her eyes and made the eyeliner kind of gloppy, but I don't recommend drawing every eyelash out, especially for something this small. Like if you're doing some giant blow up of a photorealistic eye, or if you're drawing, I don't know, Raggedy Ann, draw each eyelash, but I think it's better to do it more impressionistically. One thing I've learned is to make sure that any pens that I use are going to be completely waterproof. And it usually says right on the side of the pen, but just double check that, and then that way you can let it dry and then go in again with the watercolor and color it in. Or in this case, kind of feels like I'm doing Elizabeth's makeup. My favorite genre of movie, maybe it's not even a genre so much as like a recurring theme, especially when I was young and maybe renting a movie to watch alone. No, I don't mean, yeah, one of my favorite things to do would be to like go and get a freezer burrito at the 7-Eleven and pick out a movie and then watch it alone. And when I would do that, I tended to pick out these movies that were about like punks or greasers, anybody that's sort of like all about this gang that they're in, you know, and living for this look and this style and their friends. The thing is, at the end of all these movies, they typically start to grow out of it and do something else, and suddenly they're not living for being a punk and moshing every night. I think that's a universal theme because it's something that we all go through. Just take it like if you looked at me in high school, you wouldn't even recognize how I dressed back then. You know, one of my biggest heroes in life is Nick Cave, and I think he's a great example of somebody who had an over-the-top gothic rocker look. He still dresses sexy as hell, right? But he's got an age-appropriate look, and I think that's cool to kind of see how you can evolve your style and your attitude and still retain that darkness. And I guess that's why it's okay that Elizabeth Hurley isn't a goth anymore. You know, that's fine. It doesn't matter if she was like that for a day or, you know, just went out that night like that. Looked like it was pretty involved hair, so it probably was a bit of a commitment. But she doesn't look like that anymore, and that's okay too. Well, I think Elizabeth is shaping up here. I guess I'll just say my next one will be better. So until next time, thanks for joining me. This has been Let's Draw Goths.